Hello and welcome back to another UCL Fantasy video. Today we have the penultimate match day of the season. We're into the second leg of the semi-finals and we are back again with another ultimate guide, which means we're going to have everything that you need to know for the best possible decisions for match day 16. Now, as I said, it is the second last match day. Match day 17 will be the final match day of the season, and we're getting the 3 transfers to prepare our teams for the second legs. Now, as I said last week, our 3 transfers for this week don't really have to be used on preparing for the final, because in the final you only really need to have 11 starting players because the bench doesn't really matter. So for most of us, the 5 transfers should be enough to get a full starting 11. So if there's any players that you're wanting to pick up for this week, make sure to do that with your 3 transfers and don't really feel too bad about them getting eliminated for the final, because it's probably not going to matter too much. Now, as it is still the semi-finals, there hasn't really been too many changes. Obviously, we're still allowed 6 players per team, which was the same in match day 15, and there is also only 1 match per game day. So we've got 1 match on Tuesday, which means 1 captaincy from that match, and 1 captaincy on Wednesday as well. Now, this is how the draw is looking after last week's matches, and again, still the same projected final. PSG and Barcelona are still the 2 projected teams to make it to the final according to the odds. Now, the big favourite this week is going to be PSG. They're given an 83% chance of making the final, with Arsenal only given a 21% chance. Obviously, PSG won 1-0 at the Emirates, and they have a big advantage going into the second leg. Now, with Barca and Inter, it's a little bit different. They obviously drew 3 each in the first leg, and now Inter Milan are at home, but Barcelona are still expected to go through instead. Barca are given a 60% chance of making it to the final, with Inter only a 44% chance. As far as the fixtures go for this week, again, some pretty decent odds going about. We don't have all red fixtures this week. We have Barcelona and PSG each with a 40% or higher chance of winning the game in match day 16. And as we all know already, most of our teams are probably filled with Barcelona and PSG players. Inter obviously having that home match against Barcelona this week. Again, a lot of us have the Inter Milan strikers, or I would imagine probably all of us have Lautaro Martinez and Marcus Thuram because of the lack of strikers in matchday 15, but we are going to talk about that in just a little minute. That home fixture could be decent for them to do quite well as well this week. Now, the one team with a really difficult fixture this week is going to be Arsenal, obviously away to PSG. They're, I believe, given a 28% chance of winning this week, which does give it a red fixture against PSG, but they're looking like the toughest team to own this week against PSG, despite being 1-0 down. Now, this is how our injury list is looking for matchday 16. A couple of new players since last week, and a couple of players are back as well. Starting off with Jurrien Timber, got injured in matchday 15 and had to come off early. He does look as though he is going to be fit for matchday 16, which is going to be ideal if you do own him. For Pavard and Martinez, they are 2 players who could potentially be back. They are still doubts, but it is looking more likely for Martinez that he is going to be fit for this week. So again, like I said, most of us probably do own him. It is looking likely that he is going to be able to start. Of course, we are getting the lineups before that match as well, so that is going to be ideal. And obviously with Inter Milan, we usually get the actual confirmed lineups, a couple hours before the deadline. So we're going to be able to see whether he is going to be starting or not. With Pavard, it is a little bit more of a doubt. There is still a chance that he could make it. Again, I think most of us probably have transferred him out at this point because he wasn't available for matchday 15, but that is just something to keep in mind. With Balde, I've seen a lot of mixed, news reports about him. Some saying that he is going to be out. The Inter Milan game is coming too soon for him, but there is a couple of reports as well that say he is going to be travelling. He could potentially make the game and just be thrown in to try and win that semi-final. So it's another one that we're going to have to wait and see on. Again, lineups come out, which is ideal with this. A lot of the injury list is Barcelona and Inter Milan players, who are the teams that we're going to be able to see the lineups before the deadline, so that is ideal. Again, with Lewandowski, looks as though he's going to be back. Whether that's in the starting 11 or not is still yet to be seen, but he will be travelling and he will be in the squad. Koundé, is going to miss out. I believe he came off in the Champions League game with a hamstring injury. He looks as though he's going to be out for a couple of weeks, so he is definitely missing match day 16, and he looks to be the only player who is 100% out that wasn't last week. Now we've got Ousmane Dembele, again another one who is a doubt, but does look as though he is going to be fit. So again, another player who's owned by pretty much all engaged managers. He looks like he is going to be fit, but again, still a doubt for this week. Very low clean sheet odds as well this week, with PSG top of the table with only a 29% chance of a clean sheet. Obviously, they were the only team that picked up a clean sheet last week against Arsenal, but even now with the home fixture, they are at the top, but it is still fairly low. Barcelona and Arsenal with a 22 and 20% chance of a clean sheet, and then it's the lowest with Inter Milan at a 17% chance, which isn't, too different from our other teams. They are obviously highlighted in red with them being below 20%, but Barcelona, Arsenal and Inter are all very similar. If you do want to go for, clean sheets in defence, PSG are going to be the team to do so, but as always, with these later stages, the clean sheets are very sparse, and with your defenders, you really want to be picking, attacking threat defenders or ball recovery defenders just for those extra points, because the clean sheets aren't going to come for every single player. And then for the goal odds, again, fairly similar to last week, Barcelona are at the top. They have a 31% chance of scoring over 2.5 goals. PSG in second with 26, then Inter with 23. Arsenal are the lowest again this week with only a 15% chance of scoring 2.5 or more goals. So they're not very favoured this week, Arsenal. So if you do own, Saka, Trossard, Martinelli, could be a week to potentially look at getting them out. Obviously, they aren't likely to make the final. I did say that doesn't really matter too much, because our 5 transfers should be enough, but if you want to play the odds, Barcelona attackers and PSG attackers could be the move this week, as a transfer from any of your Arsenal guys who aren't expected to do too well this week. Obviously, Barcelona being at the top of this list, someone like a Lewandowski, if he is going to be starting, is probably going to be a fairly obvious transfer for whatever attacker that you've got at this point. Obviously, Desiree Doué is probably another one that a lot of people do own, but one of your Inter Milan attackers is probably going to be the move, whether that's Thuram or Lautaro Martinez, whether he is going to be fit or not, to Lewandowski is probably going to be one of the more popular moves this week. And finally, rounding it all off with the ball recoveries, we've actually had no changes to the list from last week. Obviously, a lot more of our players have added ball recoveries to the list, but the actual top 10 has not changed. The big ball recovery player last week was Nuno Mendes. He picked up 8 ball recoveries against Arsenal, and he is now third in the list, which he always has been. Now, he's up to 79, which is a pretty decent score, and again, if you don't own Nuno Mendes at this point, he is definitely someone that you want to get in, because his attacking threat is huge. If he scores or gets assists and obviously clean sheets, there's a very high chance of him picking up player of the match as well, and with him being third on the ball recovery list, he's probably the number 1 defender to get at this point. If you're looking for someone else alongside him, obviously that would be someone like Hakimi. Myself personally, I own Hakimi, Mendes, Marquinhos and Pacho, the 4 PSG defenders for the ball recoveries, and obviously they kept a clean sheet last week as well, which was perfect, and this week they are top of the clean sheet lists again. So if you're looking for defenders this week, it's definitely PSG that I'd want to be looking at. So that's going to be it for today's Ultimate Guide. My team selection video will be out later on today, so make sure to subscribe and hit notifications so you know exactly when that does come out. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to leave a like. Make sure to follow me on Twitter as well for any team news that does come out before the deadline, and I'll see you all in the next video.